All right, it is 7 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
A motion by Councilmember Welch.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Mock. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. You here for community comment, Eric? No. No, okay. Then I will move right along. We're going to bump 9.1 up a little bit in the order. Communications and reports, the water monthly report. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So happy to present the city's, I would say, first a kind of general monthly water report. So this is kind of an outgrowth of some of the community conversation and concern related to water quality. So I'm going to kind of briefly kind of go over it. So we're going to have a monthly message. So this will typically be at our second meeting of the month, but because of some of the data that we're using. To try to spin that around for the first meeting is going to be a challenge, but understanding there is some community urgency to getting the information out, we sped that up. So the next report would be at your second meeting in March. So that's whatever the third Monday in March is. But monthly message, operations update, monthly testing data, etc. And so I'm just going to kind of run through this. The city engineer, Dan Lannis, is going to kind of help me out on the technical end. But I do think that the monthly message, especially for this first report, is critical in that I would offer that we've had, not all, but in some cases we've had a misalignment of expectations and communications with some residents who have experienced discolored water. There's been a narrative out there that if someone experiences discolored water, they submit it to the site. That narrative includes them not maintaining their household appliances correctly, water heater, toilet, etc. And where the disconnect had come in as we started talking about this with the team is that it's a both and, meaning that we have levels of, or we have elements within our water main system, iron, manganese, etc., that are kind of loose and through a spring flushing will kind of be purged from the system. And Dan will kind of get into some specifics of what we're also doing kind of at the head end of the water plant to reduce those impacts. But in that interim period, as that discoloration kind of moves within the water main, folks are getting that into their system. And so our initial response was, let us help you get that out of your appliance, your hot water heater, your toilet, etc. And because some of the limitations that go along with electronic correspondence, namely email, we just weren't connecting. And so we made a transition to in-person contacts on all water concerns, or at least we offer it. Not everyone feels comfortable with that, and that's their right to do that, but that gives our team, namely Eric Menth, Chad, Shell, and Russ Carver, the opportunity to go out, meet with that resident, not just talk about what's going on in their home, but also in the system and how the two fit together. And early on over these last 2 weeks, that's really anecdotally made a big difference. And so in taking kind of their experiences, our team's experiences out in the field, we wanted to share that message and hopefully provide some clarity on thought and what's occurring in the system. Under operations, the team completed that off-season flushing, so primarily in the Oak Tree, Copper Hills area. A full citywide water main flush is planned for the spring. It's typically done when overnight temperatures are above freezing for 30 days or more, so we are somewhat limited. It's a kind of a head-to-toe flush. The utilities team charged the filter system, which promotes manganese and iron removal throughout the filtration process. The team also cleaned the reclaim tank. We also had, as the council knows, a contractor illegally access a hydrant, which kind of exacerbates our current community conditions at Ironwood and Fulton. But the kind of a silver lining to that is we followed right up with putting these denoting markers on our fire hydrants based on the council's recent adoption of the illegal access to fire hydrant ordinance. So with that, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Dan to kind of go over the monthly testing data and kind of make some connections to the work that the engineering and public services team is doing, frankly, every day, all day, on kind of understanding our system, some historical kind of denotations as it relates to manganese, because there's a kind of a community conversation related to that, and then be available for any questions the council might have. So, Dan?
Well, sure. I'll just highlight what many of you already heard is for the most part, we had acceptable levels of filtration for iron and manganese, but more opportunity to improve on the manganese side of things. And that's really what we've been focused on at this point. But throughout the process here, I think we've had to conclude that it's really not necessarily the water leaving the plant as it's coming out that's really driving our issue, because if you take the water coming out of the plant, you've got clear water, but yeah, we have some water in these folks' homes that is looking somewhat discolored, stale. And so we had a lot of things going on here. We ended up with closed valves, and we ended up with with water that needed to be flushed more frequently. But the manganese was definitely an area that we wanted to optimize on, and that was I think around 0.1 is where it was, and that's historically where Carver's been producing water. Really, I would say for probably about the past 20 years, I would say your water was around a 0.1, because to our knowledge, you were never really running filtration through charged filters. It was just sand filtration, which will get you down to about that 0.1. So your historical levels have been around that range now, which would also lend to the fact that that's likely not causing the slew of comments that are more recent, because you've really been filtering that way for decades. So, but we did see opportunity here that's not the best we think we could do with the system. So the charging the filters was very significant. The primary filtration levels get down to about a 0.05, and that's where we're at now. So we're getting into the filtration levels that we think are close to optimum, which is good long term. It keeps your system cleaner as far as the amount of manganese that is in the system. It's an enhancement in any number of ways to get as much out as you can. Iron has always been good. And so overall, the report is the plant is getting to the place of where we want it to be, which is about the best manganese removal we're going to be able to get. And that's probably a cut in half your manganese over historical levels. And then iron's always been low. And past that, we're just looking at nice stable operations for months is really what we're trying to get to, is a place where we've got a plant that has given us a good stable result. So any questions on results or what you're hearing?
I just have, so we were doing winter flushing. Is that something that's going to continue all winter long, or did we do one and done? Does it matter if somebody taps in illegally to another fire hydrant?
Yeah, well, the intent with the flushing here is to do something that really hadn't been done in the past. Is we're obviously dealing with some pockets in the city, because the complaints tended to be focused on certain areas. Yep. And we're thinking, all right, well, we have a fair amount of sediment that is at least has settled out, accumulated in the pipes in certain parts of the system that don't get as routinely flushed with new water. And so the flushing expectation is going to be as needed, and it's going to vary by parts of the city. So number one, it was to find out what we did have, clean out the areas where we had some issues. In some of these areas, we are thinking that we're going to have to do this consistently. And so especially areas of dead ends, that may not be a need that ever goes away. It's just going to have to be part of the new program, where we're going to have to actually take those areas that have water that's not turning over enough. We might have to do that every year. It might be part of the new program is flush those dead ends. And you're a growing city, so those new dead ends start to creep up with new developments. You'll notice that some of these areas that were having complaints may not have existed however many years ago. And so these new dead ends come up, Next thing you know, we have a new part of the city that you might need to flush.
Sorry, so I hear you saying yes, winter flushing will continue.
Yes, a super long way to say yes.
Like only you can, Dan. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Does anybody else have any questions?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
So the fire hydrant that we had someone illegally access, were they cited? Were we able to cite them for fine?
We don't have any proof.
Okay, so we couldn't prove it in a court of law, but we know who did it and what happened.
We believe that we did and, or do. And one of the things that we've done as kind of an outgrowth of that, like folks that we understand to be working in the area, our building inspections team and public services team have been kind of spreading the word about the new ordinance, have shared it via email. We have the signs up, so we believe that we've taken a pretty good action step on awareness in the community.
Okay, so I'm going to make the assumption that city staff found it after the fact, could tell it had been tampered with, and then know some of the work that's being done in the area and are just, unfortunately, can't tie them officially to each other.
Correct. There is also as they're putting these markers on Thursday and Friday last week, found another one, I think in the neighborhood, like near Gilfillan, that was also accessed. So, and again, that's what makes this so challenging, because, there are a bunch of different things that could be occurring, and it's not just one, but that's hard to explain when you're not in person, and so that's what that impetus is to connect. Even as kind of learning about this process from some of our technical experts, even water plants from city to city use a wide array of technology and filtration processes. So it's not as simple as going to McDonald's and expecting to get that same type of Big Mac every time. People are using different technology, and so there is a real high level of specificity here in understanding our system, and so that's why the more we can have these conversations, the better off we're going to be.
Okay, and then we understand this, but for anybody who might be watching, anytime you release water from a hydrant, you are mixing up the system, and it's going to cause brown water, no different than when we do it purposely every spring, correct?
Yeah, it's flushing the system, and it's changing direction can actually cause issues in the mains, yes.
Okay. And then my other question is, Dan, with the other cities that you work with these endpoints that seem to be giving us some issues where that water ends at the end of our developments, are you seeing these same issues in other cities, or are we kind of special in some way with this?
No, it's pretty common in growth areas, and so in fact, one of the recommendations came from a gentleman who used to work in Prior Lake. They said they had terrible issues until they started a very routine flushing program, and they had any number of dead ends that they actually had to flush a majority of the wintertime. And so we're taking experiences and circumstances from some of these other areas where they really had struggled even more so, and we're applying it to this city and these locations and trying to get a regular program established. So
Okay, thank you.
I guess I had probably two questions. Just do you feel that we have a good procedure in place for when a resident does report an issue, that we have feedback, and then we also get enough information that can help us localize issues in the system, right?
Yeah, so you kind of have a multi-step process. So one is kind of, I would say, a template answer of some of the information that's taken off there, but based on what their experience is, we might skip that step. And
Sure.
so the first step is the standard kind of, here's the information we have. The second step is either a call from me or Eric Menth, the utility superintendent. But frankly, for the last 2 weeks, we've been triaging everything up to the third step, which is a response from staff and an appointment with the utilities, somebody on the utilities team. One of the things, and whether it's a balance of or ingredients of a community conversation and council feedback, but the thing we're trying to rectify going forward is I would offer there was a pent-up conversation about this issue in the community for a number of months that wasn't reaching our ears. And that doesn't make the community wrong and staff right, or staff right and the community wrong. It's just that that happened. And when kind of it broke, we got 40 comments in a weekend. And we probably spent, looking back, more time preparing the community report than really trying to understand what was happening to the folks. And so in the future, you might see us take an extra 2 to 3 weeks to say, we hear you, we're going to get you a report, but it's not going to be the same week. And I think the second strategy is like, how can we get at that community conversation in a meaningful way? I think folks now understand that submit a concern and resident report, but there's something missing that I think through a community conversation, including the council, that if we can find a way to kind of get that, because I think what we're dealing with now, and residents have absolutely the right to kind of feel that way, but they feel, in my opinion, the folks that we're dealing with, somewhat aggrieved and cynical about how the city is going to respond to that, which we are willing to take on head first, but it creates another set of challenges when we're having to, in my opinion, kind of prove ourselves to them. And we will do that, even if it takes like one day at a time. But if we can learn from that and avoid that circumstance on other issues that impact our community going forward, we'll be better off. So if we can figure out where the disconnect is, we'll find that better spot and learn from this. I just don't know what that is right now.
No, that's good. And then just again, general comment, like if anyone does have water issues, it's in their interest, in the city's interest, to let us know right away so we can help them and also help the city diagnose any issues that we have too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No, even though we're able to do kind of flushing in smaller kind of neighborhood areas where there's dead ends, et cetera, there's, we anticipate, or folks can expect from time to time they might have intermittent discolored water until we can do that full system flush, because it's basically kind of trapped in the system. It's not harmful, it's off-putting, it's not ideal, but the conditions that we have right now don't lend themselves to doing when we do a hydrant flush in the community, it takes a month. And so that's all hands on deck. And so we don't want to solve one problem by creating another with ice on the streets or, having water flow and freezing temperatures, et cetera. So am I hitting all the right notes on that, Dan?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I do have some comments and a few questions. Thank you. I like the the material that's presented in a monthly newsletter. When you said at our meetings, is it going to be work sessions or council chambers, where the second Monday of the month?
So at your second meeting of the month, you get a whole kind of compilation of kind of department reports. So it's building inspections, there's facility rentals. So it'd be included with that. And if in the interim, for these first couple months, if you just want to pull that out and have staff give a verbal update, in addition to that, we can do that, but we'll follow the pace the council sets for that.
And so not the work sessions, but at the...
It'll be at the regular meeting
meetings.
at the end of the meeting under monthly reports. Okay. It'll be included at your second meeting in March. And whether it's water or facilities or the sheriff's office report, we can pull that out and go over questions, or you can ask for a summary of the report by staff at that time. Right. We also, just one more addition, anyone who has sent the city a report of concern related to water quality since early December, we kept their emails, and they were specifically sent a copy of this month's monthly water report in addition to the packet. So, and we got some follow-up questions related to that. So again, that's hopefully like one step towards building a stronger relationship on this topic.
One of the other questions on that first chart, the desired range, that is coming from Department of Health.
Yeah.
And then water treatment, so I understand the area tested, I understand that. So the second one, water treatment, is that like when it's first coming out of the water treatment facility?
Yep, the discharge.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what's the distribution system testing? That would be my faucet, or like somewhere in the middle in between those two?
I'd have to ask staff on that. I was just talking about that the other day, but I believe it's a few areas around the city where they pull water from
Okay.
the public buildings on the outside of the
Correct.
the
So-
distribution network.
We have various spots, so they could do like in the past, they've done like City Hall, Casey's, et cetera. Recently, folks that have shown an interest, they can volunteer to have one of their homes or their properties be included in that. I think they average about half a dozen properties. You have to run the water for like a half hour, and then they collect a sample. But it measures from points throughout the community, not just leaving the water treatment
Okay.
facility.
But, so what has me confused is, made it sound like when the water's just leaving the facility, it's visually in a better aesthetics condition, versus once it's gone through whatever part of the system, that's when it's just maybe a lower grade. But the numbers seem opposite.
Yeah. That's because the hard thing to explain this entire time has been, if we were drinking the water that was leaving the facility, we wouldn't have any complaints. It's the fact that it gets into the pipes, in some cases in dead ends, it becomes stale. And, the solids can accumulate in stagnant water, and then it can start to cloud up a little bit, and that's where you get the discoloration. The actual amount of minerals actually in the water leaving the facility is clear. And then as it goes through it, you might see some of that precipitate out, and you'll have lower levels outward in the distribution system. Now, if it sits there on a dead end for a long period of time, that might be different with these complaints coming in. So we're not having these high levels of water throughout the whole distribution system, or you'd have 5,000 comments.
Okay.
And so it's really parts of the system that things are accumulating in the water by these certain areas in these certain loops, or maybe dead ends, and it's picking up sediment in these minerals in the water and bring it into these areas. Or you'd have far more widespread comments.
Okay. Then if we have an idea of kind of the higher areas, or you might know the next month or when weather allows it to do any flushing, could that maybe be included in the newsletter or sorry, the water report? And even though maybe it's just tentatively we think we'll be, at these streets, at this intersection.
Yeah, we have a whole series of sandwich board signs as well, so we'll post that at kind of the major entrances of every neighborhood as we do it by section. So we're gonna pound those signs and social media postings and the newsletter, because there's a little bit of a short period of adverse impact to that flushing. Long term, it's great, but there's gonna be kind of a little burst of like discolored water again in people's systems as we go through that exercise.
So maybe I should set it as a suggestion, if you know where you might be the next month doing that work, to add it to the report. Say this is this month's report, but looking forward, this is what's coming up.
They're gonna have it done in 30 days.
Okay.
It won't take multiple months.
Okay.
So they're gonna do I think they go from north to south. I think that's,
Yeah, I've seen the plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
and it was probably then that second slide or graph that I'm seeing. I was thinking that this was gonna be, in warmer weather, this was gonna continue.
This is the amount of water that's gone through the water treatment plant, not how much we pumped for flushing.
correct, the gallons of water, but that's from like the city's aquifers.
Okay.
And the well houses. So you'll see, we're offering here that like the city's water system isn't just about this issue that we're dealing with today, that, one of the major drivers of cost, which is also kind of a secondary piece that folks have been talking about, is summer irrigation. And so you're gonna, I think, as you see this table or graph develop over the year, you're gonna see those numbers rise exponentially during irrigation. And when you hear the engineering team talk about planning for another water treatment plant, it's about, planning for that maximum daily demand, that highest peak average in June, July. And so hopefully that helps the community understand how that need for infrastructure, the need for watering, and will impact costs down the road. And then we're gonna, at the end, we include some maintenance tips. People often ask about water softening. We're gonna try to get into kind of all different types of areas, conservation as it relates to irrigation. So if you have ideas or topics, or the community has topics that they want addressed, we feel like this is a good platform to have that conversation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Two more things. So when we have this for the January 23rd, where it was accessed on Fulton Road and Ironwood, are we going to add now the Gale fill-in one? Are we going to keep referencing the places that were hijacked?
We don't know when that was opened.
Okay.
We just found the cover off of it, so we don't know when it may have been impacted. But yeah, I mean, anything related to, the water, the council may remember a few months ago, you approved two new under drain systems to the filter. I know that gets a little wonky, but I think the more information on what we're doing to maintain the plant and experiences the team's having out in the field, it encourages more conversation on the topic. So
I just think with this, if the community watchdog, also you're going to see, wait, who's that person over at the water or the hydrant? You know what I mean? Where before you might not have thought about it. This says, wait a minute, these people I've heard are stealing. I should call it in. And if it's nothing great, if they were supposed to be, they're great. But if they're not, now we can hopefully catch somebody who's actually stealing from the city.
That's a fabulous point, and thankfully I have a great example of that. We had someone with a contractor's truck backed up to a hydrant and sent a photo to Eric Menth, our utility superintendent, saying, I think someone's stealing water. And we checked it out, and they were actually just releasing water from their tank. So the community awareness based on the council's work is taking hold, and so that'll help. You'll hear it in my update, but connected with the city's new liaison from the sheriff's office, Joel Dearson. Our deputies are aware of this kind of issue that's ongoing, and so they've made it a point to kind of drive kind of in the further west areas of the community to be checking for this. So
I just think residents knowing it's not a singular issue or a singular time, that it has happened multiple times, it's probably going to help the watchdog help us.
yes.
Wait until we put a reward on it.
Oh, yes.
Lunch with the two of us.
Yeah.
We want them to actually call in.
Right, I know.
And then, one point that Lori brought up here with the desired range, does it make sense to maybe put as, required by the MDH something so they know it's not our desired range, but this is set by the state?
The interesting thing about these is they're not so much limit as they are suggested guidelines.
Oh, okay.
And so we actually don't have a standard where we
There's no
violate.
statute that says it has.
Because you can drink well water and you're not violating the Department of Health. It's just their suggested guidelines, and
Okay.
many of these guidelines are set based on aesthetics, and you know why.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you.
Just one more piece, and Dan mentioned it, but I think it's worth emphasizing is in December we had finished manganese at 0.09. It's listed here at 0.78, but as recently as late last week, I think we had it down to 0.5. So there's, again, 0.9 has been the levels for the last ever since the city's had water treatment. And so I think that's a testament to the work that the engineering team and the public services folks are doing to really take this thing head on, to limit kind of that at the head end. Again, it was a historical average, but we're responding to what the community says that they're wanting, the direction from the council.
Thank you. I was just going to make some comments in this at the end of the first paragraph you have. We can and will do better. And I think that that's like the theme of all of this, right? We're only as good as what we hear from the residents. And unfortunately, we didn't reach that tipping point of really hearing from our community about these issues in mass until early December. So we need to hear from folks. There's a report of concern button on the website. posting on a Facebook community page or neighborhood page doesn't accomplish that. But I think the signs look great. I noticed a couple on my way down here tonight. I think it was great. You know, again, when you report that concern, what Brent said, we will send staff into your house to connect with you and to help problem solve and to take a look at what you're experiencing. And we've got just some of the best folks in Russ and Eric and Chad and Brent and everybody really who's working on this. But I appreciate this. I hope that that emphasizes and I've been able to adequately say just how much of a priority this is. And I'm saying it to you to make eye contact, but you guys know this. Eric, since you're the only member of the public that's here, this is something we're working really hard on. It's a top priority. A lot of folks are losing sleep over this. And it's something that I'm afraid we're not yet at the point of crossing it off our list and saying that's solved, we're done, but we are all hands on deck and working really hard to get this done. Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for all your work on this. Appreciate it. And thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody who's helped from the ordinance of, you know, stealing water to the water action team. I appreciate everybody's hard work. All right. Let's see. We don't have any public hearings tonight. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Mock,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Welsh. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion passes. All right, business items. 8.1, fleet vehicle purchase for public services. Mr. Marin.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So presenting consideration for the purchase of 2 fleet vehicles for the Public Services Department. This Public Services Department maintains a general fleet of light, medium, heavy-duty vehicles to perform really all levels of maintenance throughout the city. We also have a specialty fleet, which includes kind of those larger plow trucks, utility truck with the crane on it, sign truck, etc., jetter truck. In kind of reviewing this, we kind of started from scratch. Lynn Schutte, the finance director, along with Paul Schultz, the public services superintendent, Eric Ment, the utility superintendent, and I met for probably about an hour and a half and just, you know, went through all their vehicles and talked about not only what you see here tonight, but as you know, we've been talking to them for some time about a equipment certificate for some larger items later on in the spring. One of the challenging pieces here is, frankly, just the availability of these vehicles. We, frankly, had ordered one, I think, over like a year and a half ago that the Public Services Department just received about 2 weeks ago. And so as we're kind of moving towards this, the medium-duty trucks were scheduled to be acquired through the equipment certificate. And Paul Schultz found these 2 vehicles available on the lot. And there has been somewhat of a transition in that for many years, decades, frankly, these types of vehicles would be available through a state bid process. However, kind of that opportunity has dried up, at least in the short term, and cities, in a lot of cases, are being compelled, if they want a replacement vehicle, to purchase right off the lot, just like you and I would. And so in trying to kind of develop as this plan, understanding that these trucks are kind of vital in the same way that a computer might be to our office staff, developed a strategy to get out ahead on these 2 medium-duty trucks, one purchased out of utilities and one purchased out of the general fund. But rather than going through a capital equipment note, and since we're not, frankly, ready to make that purchase, with Lynn's support and guidance, developed a plan to purchase these vehicles through should the council approve it, a resolution for an interfund load from the sanitary sewer fund. The vehicles are in that $50,000 range, but by the time you get the plow package, taxes, fees, logoing the vehicle, etc., you get up into that $70,000 range. So that lighting package, etc. So the city received 2 quotes, one from Apple Ford, one from Boyer Ford. You can see the payback on the capital allocations from 25 through 28, along with a resolution for the interfund loan. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Rick.
yeah, could you just give a background on how the loan itself would work, or just, what the process is?
Sure. So there aren't budgeted like operational funds in the general fund to make that purchase, and so rather than waiting for the equipment fund kind of conversation, since there's available resources kind of in the sanitary sewer, or think about different funds that you might have, paying for that over time, still at interest cost, paid back to the sanitary sewer fund, but from a kind of a administration cost, far less expensive than going through bond rating, et cetera, legal fees, bond review. This provides an expedited process to get the vehicles, frankly, in the garage and available to use by the Public Services Department. So it's not done a lot, but I would say maybe once or twice a year the council will authorize an interfund loan from a resource that has fund balance built up for a future infrastructure project.
Gotcha, okay.
And so you're not taking away anything because you're paying it back, but the intended use of those funds won't be used till after the term of the loan is paid back.
Exactly.
So it's a way to kind of make existing resources work for you in a different way.
Gotcha. Yep.
Brent, these are existing trucks that are on Apple Ford's lot, or are we gonna have to go through the waiting process?
They're here. They're not here, but they're there.
There.
They're in Shakopee. Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So when we're looking at the payback time up to 2028, is this putting that fund that we are borrowing from in any kind of jeopardy that we're not going to be able to complete any of our items that we have set long-term?
No.
My other question is, if we go then to the 10-year equipment certificate, if we go out for these, taking that 140,000 out, does that put us in any different range for, I don't know, fees that are associated with it, interest rates? Like, do we get a break on anything because we have a larger dollar amount that we're taking out for a 10-year certificate?
No. We're going to be, the bond is going to be actually several buckets. So you're going to, at least at this point, what you've considered as the equipment certificate, but it's also going to be a utility revenue note for the water tower restoration project up by Mills Fleet Farm. And then there's the potential, which I'll share in the update, but for a 429 assessment project for the school district's transportation facility. So a lot of these things we're kind of we'll be doing already, and so they'll be prorated based on the overall amount. So, if you think of it, if the bond rating call with Standard & Poor's was 20,000, instead of it maybe being a third, and a third, it might be I'm doing math.
Oh,
It might be prorated differently, but like the interest rate isn't going to be impacted by the dollar amount and based on a $140,000 change.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have.
All right. If there are any questions, I'd entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to authorize the purchase of two 2024 Ford F-250s from Apple Ford for the amount of $101,398.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Mock, second by Councilmember Sarah. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 105-24, authorizing an interfund loan of $140,000 from the Sanitary Sewer Fund.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Councilmember Sarah and a second by Councilmember Welsh. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Moving on to the city manager's report. Brent.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So several updates to share. So I just kind of mentioned Eastern Carver County Schools is working to develop a piece of property, what's kind of locally known as the former Joe Wickenhauser property. I would say just kind of probably a quarter mile on the west side of, or quarter mile up from 212 on 11 on the west side of the road. There's an old farm site that's a kind of essentially where that property or that would develop for kind of basically the school district's bus garage and storage. So several layers to that. Dave Anderson, the city attorney, has been involved, the engineering team, Aaron Smith, the community development director. But as some of you may recall, that property was previously listed as ag reserve through that program. And because of that standing, it was listed as such in the city's comp plan. So although not an obstacle, it's something the city will have to deal with. And so Aaron is working with Dave on processing a comprehensive plan amendment that takes that from ag reserve to the use that we're discussing. The property also needs to be annexed. And so coordinating a petition for annexation with Dahlgren Township and the district. And then probably most significantly is this project would include the extension of Commerce Drive. So that's the road that runs north and south past Lakeview Industries off of Levi Griffin Road. It would stretch to the future property line of the school district's property. And the district wants to explore potential for petitioning the city to do that 429 process. So what that is for the folks that are watching, the council hasn't done one for a while, is essentially the city does the project. So designs the project, bids the project, the contractor then constructs it, and then the costs are assessed back to the property owner. Now, in a residential setting, like the council's done, there's that, a special benefit analysis where only a certain amount can be assessed, and the 20%, 80% that we deal with. In this case, all the costs would be assessed back to the school district if they chose to do that route, and the council agreed to do that work so that Dave is kind of drafting some agreements that would allow them to make that kind of request to the council. So something to have on your radar. It's not something that we deal with in a situation like this. I would say 20 years ago it was pretty standard practice for cities to do that for, frankly, all new development projects where the city was in control, but that over time transitioned to the developer doing all those improvements and then turning it back over to the city. So just wanted to give you some line of sight to that. I'm not sure what the pace is going to be on that.
Brent, I want to make sure I understand. So when we're talking about the 429, this is not for just the road. This is building their
Nope,
facilities.
Just the road.
Just the road. Okay. thank
Street,
you.
curb, gutter,
Okay.
water, and sewer.
Okay.
They would construct their own building on their property, so this is just for the public improvements.
Okay. Thank you.
If the,
I missed that part. I thought, wait a minute.
yeah, you were looking at me and I was like, what's going on?
Yeah. Brent could see my.
And so, again, they haven't formally requested it,
Okay.
but we're having the conversation. You look like you have something.
No, I was just gonna say, stuff that we'll eventually own.
Yeah.
Stuff
Oh,
that-
sure.
So it's all city streets, city utilities, things that normally if a developer's gonna plat property, we say, well, you can plat that property and build that building, but you can't do it unless you have access and utilities. And so you have to do that. In this case, they're, sounds like, potentially willing to ask the city to do that for them. City controls design, construction, does all that, and then assesses everything back to the property owner over time under a pretty straightforward agreement that they sign saying, we'll pay this back over X amount of years so that the city can be made whole for that work.
Just as a refresher, what was the last 429 we did? We've done them. It's been a while.
It would have been the 2019 project with utilities in the Kirchy Hill, Dietrich neighborhood, which is a whole nother
Yeah, let's. Yeah.
bailiwick.
No wonder I've tried to put it out of my head.
Yeah.
So, just so that I'm clear, we treat it kind of from a 10,000-foot level, like it's a city project where we're building it, but then we charge it back to them with interests and
Correct.
we come out, like you said, whole. We're not
Like-
on the hook for interest for a bond. or
Yeah,
anything
the
like
skeleton of like the agreement is, you know, they waive all the kind of like the regular rights that you would have under a process, and they, there could be other provisions that provide additional securities. The debt doesn't count against the city's indebtedness, so there's no adverse impact related to that. We, Lynn connected with Tammy at Northland on that. Again, there are dozens of kind of little nits that our team is going to have to work out, but because it's such a unique circumstance, another public entity, we just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of work being done at City Hall and at the district offices to try to put this together. If everything worked just right, you'd probably see like street construction in the spring of '25. So this isn't anything that would happen this year. The district is still doing its due diligence on the property that hasn't closed. So this is a prequel to the prequel.
And if the school district proceeds with it, it's just a different way of financing, basically, at the highest level.
For the public improvements,
Yes, for them.
And there is a certain amount, frankly, of efficiency, because normally, you know, they might hire their own engineers to design the road, and then they pay for our engineers to review their designs. So there is some economy of scale or of efficiency there of this, having the engineer design it per our standard detail plates for public infrastructure. We know what's required, we put it down, we do the review with them, bid the project. It can work really well under the right circumstances.
I have an ag reserve question. So when we're looking at the work that it takes to do a comp plan amendment, and did we put it as ag reserve as our vision for it, or was this put in ag reserve with the state or another entity?
So, Mr. Wickenhauser enrolled in the program,
Okay.
so it's allowed to be brought out under certain circumstances, but the costs related to that are paid by the district. They have to
Okay.
do the comp plan amendment, but we were required by the Met Council to show any property that's in ag reserve as ag reserve in our future land use plan, even though there's, in every case, we have underlying guidance on that property, but on our official map, it had to be showed as ag reserve. That was something that Aaron Smith advocated for to change, and the Met Council that's what their rules are related to ag reserve.
Well, if it's in ag reserve, it is, so I don't have a problem with that, saying that when we calculate that into all of the rest of the things in our comp plan, having that come out of ag reserve to be now a industrial commercial area, does that affect any of our other calculations in the
It's
when it comes to
only-
ag and green space and all that?
It was only ag reserve on that map. Every other input in our comp plan showed it as, I think it has a mix of commercial, industrial on that property. So the only impact was frankly a different color on one map in the comp
Okay,
plan.
so this does not affect any of our green space calculations from this?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions on that. So then, is it considered commercial, industrial, or since it's a school district, is it, or?
That's being kind of worked through. It will likely be public institutional, right? But that hasn't been
Okay.
vetted completely.
Okay. And I was thinking of another question too. So to understand the 429, we must gain something, and then the school district must be gaining something. So would I be correct to say, for us, we would gain control of the project and that we can right-size it from the infrastructure, how we envision that area needing?
Well,
What's our benefit?
being a good partner. I mean, the road would be put in per the city's specifications regardless of whether it was a 429 or other. What it allows the district to do is pay the public improvements off over time as opposed to just paying it in a lump sum
More of a
year of
cash flow or
construction.
how?
Do
But
we get
we
interest off
don't.
that?
Pardon?
Do we gain interest off that? Yes, so actually that is our,
The city's policy is to charge 2 percentage points above what we get the bond at.
Okay,
Which
So
is pretty
we-
standard.
so we're making.
Okay. So that's more, like, as far as what would benefit us, because we'd already have
I mean, that's a benefit.
a benefit.
We're not, as a staff, we didn't go in and propose it. The district asked if the city would be willing to have a conversation about especially assessing the public improvements, and we said we would.
Okay. I know it's very early, so. just starting
Yeah,
to learn
it's a
about
big
it.
it's a big project, and you know, personally, I think, or editorial comment, I think the development will hopefully create some energy on that north side, and maybe we can spin off into some industrial or other development opportunities there with the extension of infrastructure. So, moving on, Chad Shell applied for and was appointed to another position in the Public Services Department. He's now our lead operator on the utilities side. So we have a Public Services Director vacancy. So hopefully you haven't noticed a change, but I have been serving as the interim Public Services Director for the last couple weeks. Anytime we have a change, especially one that involves a pretty big leadership position, we want to take some time to have conversations with the team and the council on next steps. You know, it's always easy just to kind of hurry up and fill that spot. We do think that there's some opportunities to kind of talk about that position differently. And so if the council has thoughts on that, we don't want to take a tremendous amount of time because there are some kind of strains on our capacity in that interim period. But we do think the conversation is worth having. So if, whether it's tonight or, you know, over the next maybe a couple of weeks, if the council has feedback you want to share either informally or at a meeting, be sure to reach out.
Could you email out what the Public Services Director job description is? Can you email that out to us?
Mm-hmm. Future public services building. So working with the engineering team and public services team on looking at available property. There are a couple of properties that we are connecting with Patch and Messner, an appraisal service out of Burnsville, just to do kind of, not a full appraisal, but kind of a short form land review where they meet with the property owner and kind of do a kind of a short report on value of that property. And so the combination of that information along with some information the engineering team is creating on infrastructure costs with each site. So some sites need water and sewer, some need a turn lane, some need have different grading needs. And so we're continuing to kind of develop those thoughts, and hopefully by this summer we can have some information to share with the council that'll continue that conversation.
When you say you're meeting with the property owner, I assume, but I just have to ask based on our recent experience, does that conversation include, are you really, really willing to sell?
Well, I'm not having the
No,
conversation.
I know. So when the appraisal team,
No, they're just going to create a part of what they think the value is, and so that
but
conversation.
they're meeting with the property owner, right? So
Yep.
we're sure that there's interest in selling?
Yes, everyone that they're meeting with has expressed an interest in selling. There are some folks that are interested, but you know, at a price that's probably not compatible with development based on the marketplace. But we'll include all that in a package and let the council decide at some point we'll have that conversation related to that. Met with the fire department team, so Chief Trimbo and Deputy Chief Walsh, along with the second assistant chief Brian Hall, Nick Jorgensen, and the Wool team on the fire station remodel. They have a concept that essentially creates another room for their turnout gear in a kind of a climate controlled area in kind of where this, I don't know, where the steps go up to the second level on the fire station side. So we'll have at an updated or a future work session kind of a schematic of how that lays out. projected cost. But after reviewing probably a handful of different opportunities, we feel like this is the most cost-effective opportunity to remedy this issue of turnout gear storage for the fire department.
So the addition is kind of off the table.
Yeah, the addition is, it's off the table if the council wants it to, but it's based on like previous projections, it's, nearly triple, it's over 1.2 million just because of the connected site improvements you'd have to make with stormwater, et cetera, to accommodate that site. So that's where we're at this point.
So the current plan is just to reuse existing square footage inside the building and remodel it?
Correct.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we had a vandalism where someone dumped a truckload of garbage bags at the boat launch on Saturday at Riverside Park. I don't know who they were, but apparently there are some good Samaritans that fished them out of the river. Russ Kerber from our public services team went down and pulled those back to the shop. I know the sheriff's office is doing an investigation on that. And so hopefully I'll have something to report at your next meeting. I'm scheduled to present on the city's Lions Park Court project to the Carver Lions in March. The Lions have always been very generous on community projects and park projects, and so I think there might be an opportunity to partner on the work the council is planning on doing in Lions Park with the tennis, pickle, and basketball courts. So I'll provide an update on that. Really big work session at your February 20th meeting. The folks from Scott County are coming out to present on the Miriam Junction Trail project. They are hoping that through a series of kind of conversations and meetings with the council that later, or I was going to say later this spring, but we're still in winter here, they're wanting to start some preliminary tree clearing on the Carver side. I know they're working to get that done on the Scott County side. And so pretty impactful and meaningful conversation as it relates to preparing for what would be kind of I would say like a generational infrastructure project, and then aligning that with another generational infrastructure project that we're doing. They are planning to present to the county board tomorrow, so I'm going to head over to the board meeting to review. I do have a draft of their presentation for the county, so I'll send that out. It'll be pretty similar, if not exactly the same as what the council will be presented with on the 20th. I know they looked at a number of kind of haul routes, I'll call them, one being down Broadway and then one being kind of the trail from Depot Park to Casey's, and they're going to be recommending, or we're proposing that be the haul route rather than coming through the downtown. So some line of sight on that. So that'll obviously have some impacts to Riverside Park. So my hope is to kind of send that out and then kind of connect with you and make sure that you're going to get everything that you need, and we can prepare for that conversation on the 20th.
Brent, we have a historical train bridge that goes into Riverside Park that has the Riverside Park on one side, historic Carver on the other. That won't be disturbed, will it?
No.
Okay, so we'll be good.
Yeah, I don't want to steal their thunder, but my understanding is they plan to kind of build a large turnaround to the east of that and kind of leave that alone. But that in turn will block access to Riverside Park by having that truck turnaround at the top. So
During construction.
During construction. But we were very aware of that. We also asked with our own kind of levee design if there were opportunities to kind of utilize that bridge as a part of a pedestrian way again. And so we're on our levee project exploring ways with Bolton and Mink where that could be used as a kind of a mini bridge and making that bridge more than just a piece of kind of living history, but people can walk across it with railings, et cetera. So stay tuned on that.
Okay, and then one other question with timing. If they're going to be blocking off the entrance to Riverside, what is our timing for the native plantings project down? Oh. Her phone's talking to her.
Oh.
Or I'm sorry, her wristwatch is talking to her.
So one of the things, so Aaron Smith is working on that. One of the things that, an idea that we're exploring is, because there's a match for that native plantings project, is that there might be an opportunity for, as a part of the project, that the city be reimbursed and and basically have our match funded for that park or that part of the project. But our intention would be to have that grant project done after kind of the heavy construction is done, and we believe, we haven't verified it completely, we'll check on that, but we believe that we have the space to delay that until the heavy use of that park and all the kind of impacts to it are completed.
Okay, so obviously I haven't seen this presentation yet. My other, on the flip side thought of that is if the park is actually blocked off for an amount of time, if there's a way to get in there and do those plantings and they'll be undisturbed or mostly undisturbed
Yep.
while that project is being built. But again, I'll
Agreed.
wait to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had that same thought, and one of the things that made us a little wary is like they are in need of, like, there's going to be some pretty large pieces of steel and rebar, and so they need a laydown area. And they asked about, the end of Broadway here, and, we said that's a public parking lot now, and so, like, I think that's gonna be a
That might be a space down
consideration.
there. Okay.
And so, but I think you're right on point. If there's a opportunity for coordination and collaboration to, like, make the use of this kind of hard construction time, and I appreciate your line of thinking of, like, how can we make the best use of this? We also have talked to Todd Hubmer and Aaron Schmidt on our levy project of, like, let's not be in a position where obviously money is a factor, but let's not have it closed for X amount of months and then have 2 months go by, open it, and then have our levy project come in right after and then close it again. So, like, all that stuff needs to be kind of coordinated, but to your, like, point, people are thinking about it. Now, hopefully with everyone's input, we can find the right answer there.
Okay, thanks.
Related to that special HPC meeting, we wanted to have this, so Scott County's making the same presentation that they will to you and the board tomorrow to the HPC on the 27th. We wanted to have them do it after the council sees it. We're also tandeming that up with a update on their certified levy project while we have the HPC, so that's why the need for the special meeting. You'll notice tonight that we don't have Zoom. There's been a kind of a pervasive trend across the metro. I'm not sure how far it extends throughout the country, but they've been called kind of Zoom pirates, where they're kind of infiltrating public Zoom meetings and sharing offensive language, videos, pictures, etc. And so after some deliberation, we haven't had really anybody, frankly, using the Zoom technology, and just based on, frankly, the kind of the scary and gross participation that we've seen other cities throughout the metro have had, we've just taken a pause on Zoom. We can fire it up if we need to, but at this point, we're not using it. So I just wanted to kind of share that and get.
If you use Zoom and you put it to a webinar rather than create it as a meeting, you don't see any of the participants. So I don't know what the legalities are of having Zoom, if you have to be able to, you can unmute them. They can technically raise their hands and you can see that. You can see a participant list, but you actually have, if you do it as a webinar rather than set it up to a meeting, the people that are on you don't see them. They're just come on as a list of people.
And I think that's a good point. I think the issue, Dave can speak to this better, but it's a First Amendment issue that under community comment, they can kind of share whatever they want, and you can't, as a council, prohibit it. And so that was creating some consternation of like, they could use all types of vulgar language or talk about issues not pertaining to the city. You want to kind of address that, Dave?
Yeah, it's less about them observing the meeting and more about when you actually open the meeting up for public participation on Zoom. You have a lot of limitations on what you can and can't cut them off for. And usually the damage is done before you have an opportunity to cut them off. They will say things or show things, images, videos, words that are harmful, offensive, can be extremely difficult for people to see, and they're disruptive. And so, I think staff thought through this, and with the exception of the few instances probably during the pandemic when people were actually participating in meetings via Zoom, that has really subsided. And when people have something to say to this council, historically they've been showing up and they sit in front of you and talk to you. And that doesn't mean that council members or consultants might not be able to utilize Zoom if the need arises for it, but I think we're just trying to see how this works in the meantime. And if we need to come up with other alternatives and the council wants us to think about that, we're happy to have that conversation. But
So like if I were to be out of state somewhere and we posted my public location, if anybody wanted to travel to Arizona to come sit with me during the meeting, would we open the Zoom then back up so that I could participate?
Yes.
And can we do that without letting in the other issues?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the only requirement in that case is that we make the meeting available, if practicable, for people that want to watch it. Doesn't mean that we need to provide them an opportunity
Interaction.
to speak during the open forum. That can be reserved for people that show up to the meeting.
Because it will always live stream. We'll always have it live stream, right?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
Right, this is being live streamed, of course, right now without the Zoom feature, so. It's been a really unfortunate few months, and I think there's an expectation that those types of individuals are only going to increase with their brazenness as we approach kind of a pretty hotly contested election and that kind of a thing. So it's just overall, I think this is a really good thing for them, at least in the meantime.
And special thanks to Brenda Good, who was a wizard trying to keep them out of your last meeting. We had 3 or 4 individuals repeatedly trying to infiltrate the comment. So thanks to Brenda for being our last line of defense. And then finally, Deputy Joelle Dearson is our new Carver County liaison to the Sheriff's Office. So she's been appropriately warned about 2 truths and a lie, and will be at your February 20th work session. So
Outstanding.
that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions or if you need updates on another issue.
I had one. Just any updates on the well house rehabilitation that we had bid early last year and then didn't get the result we wanted? Just kind of
Sure,
where that's
yep.
at.
Aaron Schmidt and Eric Menth have been working on that. We have, every other week, we have a public services engineering team meeting, so we're reviewing that tomorrow. We're likely, the bids that we got are frankly more representative of the market, so it wasn't that we got bad bids. It's just, frankly, we're going to have to probably detangle this project a little bit and maybe do it in pieces and at different times, just to kind of align with our long-term financial plan and budget constraints. The priority is to, and you'll see this in pretty short order, is to get the electrical components at the well houses done. That's the priority, and so you'll see that either at your next meeting or your first meeting in March. The other projects need to be done, but from a priority standpoint, don't reach that level that the component issue is at.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
All right.
I have 2 quick things, not for the answer today, but just as you're telling us what's coming up in future meetings. On the Miriam Junction Trail, I'd be curious to know, just because of some resident feedback I got, is if they'll allow snowmobiles. Not to
Sure.
be answered today, and not to build onto our possibility of a snowstorm in March. And then for that, the Eastern Carver County School District looking at that transportation facility, it would be helpful in future meetings for me to have Lynn's perspective of like, if we went that route of that 429 plan, is that
It's
or process or
I
I think you called it?
it's a statutory process where a city does improvements and then assesses back the cost. Lynn is, what I said was Lynn's word, like.
Oh, okay.
Lynn's been involved in every single meeting, so
Okay.
there's, we are kind of in joint thought
Okay.
on that, so there's not,
Because I lean on her for those things. So yeah,
You should.
to know, kind of like,
Don't we know?
yeah. You know, what is the benefit for the city? What is the risk if there's any?
yep,
So,
and that's good
future
that's good to
things
know,
to
and
know.
I take that as a compliment for Lynn, and so when we get to, kind of a point where, an agreement for that 429 process is presented probably from Dave and Lynn, Lynn will be here to
Okay.
kind of co-present and be able to answer questions.
All right, thank you.
All right, councilmember updates, Lori.
I do not have any.
Christie.
Most of the things I had, we've already went through in Brent's manager update. So the only one I will mention then is obviously we had the Soggy Bottom. And that was a great success. It was our final one. We raised over $18,000 for the recipient. So it was really, for everybody. Like, we're glad for everybody like who came out, helped, volunteered,
It
donated.
was a great day for you.
It was
it's
a very good day. The weather couldn't have been better, except there was no snow, so it was an interesting snow golf course, but we had a good time. And so we concluded our 15 years again. Greg Osterdyke, who we have a service award for here through the city, was one of the founders of that. So we thank Greg for his help in founding that event back in the beginning, and we'll see what arises and morphs later on. But thanks to the city, because the city's always obviously a good, helpful partner in that, because it does take some time to get set up and some city help. So we appreciate that too.
Reed?
I have a couple updates. The January Planning Commission meeting was canceled, so nothing there. But I do have some on the Carver County parks. The Baylor Regional Park has a boardwalk through some of the walking trails that has been closed for the past 2 years. And in the last year, the county board approved budget, so they're going to start construction and reopen that hopefully by this spring. And then the Paradise Commons at the Waconia Regional Park has a ribbon cutting ceremony on February 20th on Tuesday. So that'll be a new, service center for people to rent stuff to go to the beach. It's on Lake Waconia, so it'll be very nice. So that's all I have.
All right. Just a few things from me. We all know that in tonight's consent agenda, we passed a resolution for election judges. Just a huge thank you to all the folks who do that. That is, I think, an increasingly difficult job in the world we live in. So just
And
a
I
huge
saw,
appreciation
and
for
not
them.
an impressive pay. No. When she was 14, her first job was more than
Yeah,
that.
no,
so.
they are
Thank you to those
doing
people.
it out of civic
Yes.
duty. We had a Carver Business Alliance on January 19th. Attendance at those meetings continues to be strong. I don't think that Hometown Bank has missed a meeting, so it's always cool to hear from them and to get their updates. The week of January 22nd, I was a guest reader at Clover Ridge Elementary and the Family Learning Center. So I read to second graders and kindergartners at the elementary school, and then 3- and 4-year-olds at the Family Learning Center, which was super, super fun. And they're adorable, and they don't necessarily know how to ask questions depending on their age. So it'll be at the end like, does anybody have questions? I have a dog. Awesome, cool. So just really fun, and like they always crack me up there. One first question I had was, kid goes, "So do you have kids or anything?" And like just the hand gestures and everything was just, they cracked me up. Let's see. On Wednesday, January 24th, North Star Forge, which is a gentleman who makes knives. He's in what used to be Greg Witt's big red barn at the end. It's now Royce's barn. Yeah. He was on Twin Cities Live, which was just really, really cool to see what goes on. I mean, he's right downtown, but it's always been a little bit of a mystery, like how he makes all the cool stuff that he has when he has it out at the farmer's market. So really cool to see. Soggy Bottom was open. It was super, super cool. Fun and weird that mud was a little bit more of a challenge than it's ever been. But really great day. I got to meet Zach, the recipient. He was cool. They're struggling, so it was great to see that our community was just so stinking generous. Bought some tickets for the raffle, and I think I promised you last year that I wouldn't win. I again didn't win. That same night.
I won a second year in a row, though.
Did you really? Oh, rigged. Also, that same day was the Light and Seek event, which traditionally are these ice lanterns that the community helps put together. This year, there were far fewer ice lanterns, but like maybe 60 of them, way more than I thought would have been physically possible given our temperatures. But that was down at the Nature Conservatory. Just really cool, hard work by Anna Edlund, Shelley Rudolph, and Tony Dewalter always make that a fun one. That was another event where mud was more of a challenge when you're walking around in the dark than you would have thought. Had a Carver County Mayor's meeting last Friday. The League of Minnesota Cities is doing their legislative update webinar tomorrow, which is always just a really good high-level look about what to expect. And then February 1st marked the first day of community gardens being open to register. So I was talking to Brenda before the meetings, and it should be like a national holiday in the city of Carver. So I'm looking forward to it. So get your reservations in. If folks, if Carver residents haven't filled up all the reservations by a certain time, March 15th maybe, right? Maybe. It gets opened up to folks outside of our community. So
Really beds are down there now?
a lot.
There's 2 stand-up, right? And then 30?
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew there was a lot. I didn't know
Yeah,
there was 30.
there are a lot. There are a lot. That is it from me. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Got a motion by Councilmember Welch.
I'll second.
And a second by Councilmember Mock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Good evening.